Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. K. Anil Kumar, Assistant Professor, Discipline of Anthropology, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Today we will discuss about the module Tribal Folklore and Literature from the paper Tribal Cultures of India. Let us see what we will learn in this module. First, we will define and illustrate the concept of folklore, and next different components of folklore. We will talk about folklore studies in India, examples from tribal folklore in tribes. Folklore is the reflection of one's culture. It is an oral tradition that has been passed through generations. Its studies may be used to compare societies on their folk knowledge and culture, to create theories on origin, migration and diffusion, etc. Folklore was first coined by William John Thomas, a British writer, in the year 1846. Oral narratives are influenced by history. Oral tradition is preserved and propagated through written literature. India gained popularity in oral tradition only after mid-50s. Indian literature is considered to be one of the earliest literatures of the world. India has a huge population of tribal communities with rich folklores and mythologies. The tribals have a long history of oral tradition and most of them lack scripts of their languages. In this slide, we will discuss about folklore and overview. Folklore is the reflection of one's culture that brings to light the traditional beliefs, myths, folk tales and practices of the people that have been passed through the generation by word of mouth. Its studies can be used to compare societies on their folk knowledge and culture that may further help in creating theories of origin, migration, diffusion, etc. The term folklore was coined by William John Thomas, a British writer, in the year 1846. One of the most significant outcomes of the coining the term folklore by Thomas led to the establishment of folklorist academic discipline in many parts of the world. It has been derived from the German word Folklore, meaning people's customs. W.J. Thomas was a British antiquarian who came up with the term to discuss certain phrases such as popular antiquities, the lore of the people and the manners, customs, observances, superstitions, ballads, proverbs, etc. of the olden times. Folklore is therefore an oral tradition that expresses human culture and their living style through the local narratives and linguistic conventions. Franz Boas, in fact, described oral stories as a form of native ethnography that emphasizes on points and ideas that are important to the native themselves, and what we can think of oral stories as a kind of culture-wide autobiography. Oral narratives are influenced by history, although they may not be historically accurate. Societies, particularly the tribal societies, have an extremely rich oral tradition and they take importance in preserving and propagating this oral tradition through written literature. without which societies would have lost their oral tradition. Both material and non-material culture of tribal folk art has an oral tradition and is folk in character that has been transmitted from one generation to another generation. India is a diverse in its culture and tradition with its many different ethnic groups and their distinct language and religion. It is fascinating to know that four different language families of the world are spoken in India, namely Indo-European, Dravidian, Tibeto-Burman and Austro-Asiatic. They thus have a rich tradition of anthropological research work since time immemorial. However, anthropological work on oral tradition remained untouched for a long period of time, and it was only after mid-50s that studies on oral tradition gained its popularity. This is new interest in the study of oral tradition developed when structuralism began to sweep anthropological studies, and this structuralism was primarily based on Levi-Strauss studies of primitive mythologies and oral traditions. Indian literature is considered to be one of the earliest literatures of the world, and the first work of literature in the world is believed to be Rig Veda, which was written in Sanskrit, one of the oldest Indian languages. India, with its numerous folklores and mythologies that are filled with moral teachings, are relevant even in today's world. Indian folk and tribal arts have always attracted people around the globe, and their simplicity and authenticity and the story behind their arts have gained momentum worldwide. The tribal population in India are an integral part of Indian civilizations. They are seen mentioned even in Indian epics such as Ramayana and Mahabharata, who were referred to as Jana, who differed in their physical appearance, worshipped gods other than the rest of the country, and lived in isolation regions. They are a group of people who are socially and culturally different from their neighbors and are being designated tribes and listed in a schedule for special treatment by the Constitution of India. According to the Imperial Gazetteer, tribal people is a collection on families bearing a common name, speaking a common dialect, occupying or professing to occupy a common territory, and is not usually endogamous, though originally it might have been so. According to Anthropology, in the Indian context, a tribe is the best understood not by this discrete criteria, but rather by the position of a population vis-a-vis dominant ideologies and cultural patterns. A huge percentage of Indian subcontinent consists of the tribal groups belonging to Dravidian, Austroasiatic and Tibeto-Burman linguistic classification with a multiplicity of dialects. The Dravidian groups mostly belong in the southern region, the Austroasiatic in the central zone, except some tribes like Oran, the Kond and the Gond who speak Dravidian language, the Tibeto-Burman language in the northeast zone, except the Khasi tribe who speak the Monkar, a strict speech. Most of these tribal groups have their own dialect and some bilingualism, and some have lost their original language. They have a long history of oral tradition and most of them lack scripts of their languages. It was only after independence that the history and folklore of these tribal groups were properly reconstructed by academicians. Because of their long history of oral tradition, this helped the researcher to build and construct the history that had been neglected for a long time. All these tribal groups scattered around the continent, mostly towards central and northeastern part of India, having their own languages, food habits, folklore, folk art, folk dances and music that defines their unique identity. According to L.P. Vidyarthi and Rai, in their book The Tribal Culture of India, mentioned that the tribes can be described by their language, race, their level of integration with the rural folk to which they are connected, their economy, their cultural pattern, and their level of education. It is therefore important to understand the concept and importance of tribal folklore and literature, especially in a multilingual, diverse culture like India, where tribal society form a very high percentage of total population. Folklore studies also showcase the artistic nature of tribals and their intellect quality that can be predicted from their lifestyle and culture. Let us discuss about beginning of folklore studies in India. The study of folklore in India underwent three major phases. Initially, it was the British administrators in India who initiated the study of local culture with their aim to rule the people of the country, after which came to missionaries who wanted to learn the local language for their missionary purpose. In the beginning, various cultural studies including Sanskritic and ethnographic studies was an important discipline known as Indology, and folklore studies was also an important part of this discipline. Brief articles on folklores were seen in the Journal of Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal and the Indian Antiquary founded in 1874, as well as the Journal of Anthropological Society of Bombay founded in 1886. These Christian missionaries as well as the British administrators, fascinated by the cultural diversity and complexity of the country, took interest in recording all kinds of information on the local people, such as their lifestyle, rituals, oral tradition, customs, etc. Their enter to country stimulated many useful writings about the people and their culture that was immense help for their own purpose in the country as well as to the study of folklore even to this day. Although the British administrators did a fair job in collecting information on the folk material, many neglected the study on this tribal group of India. It was Warrior Elwin who religiously studied the tribal people and their oral culture, especially on the tribals of Northeast Frontier Agency. His work among these neglected people not only dug up the long history of extremely rich oral tradition but also brought the British administrators into attention for the welfare of these tribals. The last phase was the initiative by the people within the country post-independence. Ample of individuals, researchers and institutes started looking deeper into the study of their own culture by trying to explore their age-long myths, epics, legends, arts, etc., whose purpose was also to preserve their identity. The study of folklores thus started growing in the country, which led to openings of many folklore departments in institutes and universities. The study of folklore was further strengthened by Finnish folklorist Lauri Honko and Peter J. Klaus of American folklore, who conducted their fieldwork on Epic of Siri, which influenced the Indian folklorist to study of folklore with refinement. So students, let us know about folk music and dance. Folk music and dance are characteristics in tribal life and culture that form a composite whole. Normally, the music and dances are accompanied by songs, and the verses in the songs are short but are repeated multiple times when singing. In certain occasions, dancing to the tune of these folk songs and music is a good source of entertainment, as these folk tunes are normally lively and catchy. Among the tribals, the dances are of different types are classified according to the occasion. The most common are the war and hunt dance, sacred dance, and social dance. These different folk dances are accompanied by folk songs, each carrying deep meanings and reflect the past life. There are songs of victory, war, love, honor, glory, worship, rituals, festivals such as cultivation, etc. Also, the folk songs are based on their traditional beliefs and practices, incorporating numerous mythological names of places and people. These forms of art is symbolic and it represents the life of their ancestors, of their feelings, thoughts, activities, etc. In a popular performing art known as Changu Dance among the Bunias and Juangs of North Orissa, boys and girls take their respective roles, where boys sing and play the music by playing the changu, and girls on the other hand dance to the music in front of the boys by interlocking their arms and moving about forward and backward. One common feature of the tribal folk dance is interlocking of arms and moving side by side or back and forth. Some of the common instruments that are used by performing folk music by the tribals are flute, cymbal, gong, wooden drums, changu, a single membrane drum, etc. Other type of dance popular among the tribal are the sacred dance and social dances. The sacred dances are associated with worship and rituals. This dance involves worshipping something sacred by dancing around the particular item according to the occasion they are performing the dance for. Social dances are commonly associated with seasonal festivals that are mostly agriculture and cultivation based, where people dance around the trees or crops, praying to the gods and spirits for good harvest. There are also other social dances such as marriage, seasonal festivals, funerals, etc. The social dances are still prevalent in recent days among some tribal groups, although it has been altered and more of an entertainment and merrymaking. One important characteristics of folklore is that the forms may remain the same while the functions differ. Likewise, in some other kinds of folklore, The function may remain the same if not identical, and the forms differ. Among the Oran and Munda tribal groups, a work song sung during paddy plantation may help them work better and synchronize their efforts at the field. The same song may have a different function where the children at Dhumkuria sing for entertainment. Therefore, as Vidyarthi and Rai in 1985 have mentioned, it is not possible to predict the associated contextual function of folklore from the form alone. Some tribal groups also bear the meaning of man behind the name of the tribe, that is, Munda and Ho both means man. Much tribal folklore is seen to be affected to a large extent by nature, and hence many of their folk tales and folk songs are based on their habitation in the forest and their relationship with the deities and forest. One such illustration is that of the Ho tribal group, where tribal man who was possessed by a spirit runs to a spot in a jungle nearby along with villagers, which is considered as the haunt of spirit, singing a song welcoming the spirit to take up the abode on the tree. Similar stories are seen among the tribal groups of Mundari, Orans, and so on. That is folk art. Another component known as folk art includes the tribal paintings, carvings, wood and metal crafts, garments with tribal prints and decorations, tattooing, ornamentation, etc. These forms of folk art could be fundamentally related to ritualistics, utilitarian, and individualistic types. In figure 2 are seen some metal and brass craft put in display for purchase. These figures depict the instruments used in folk music among the tribals from Orissa. Aside from that, we also see various jewelries of modern designs. All this show their artistic nature and how they have invested the talent for economic purpose. The tribes in South India also comprise a significant number of total population. Tamil Nadu has 2000 years of recorded literary history, but the first work on the tribes such as Todas and Kotas were initially done by Emmanuel and Smith, who collected folkloric materials. Todas are a fascinating tribal group in Tamil Nadu who are popular for their artistic house designs with ornament motifs. The Kotas and Irulas are also well known for their handicrafts and agriculture. The other tribal groups in South India also vary considerably in their culture, from a tea and coffee cultivator society to milk production society to society that practice. Another artistic form of folk art is found in the clothes and ornaments they wear that are made locally by the tribals. Weaving is an indigenous form of making clothes, and the dye they use for colors are locally prepared. Geometric shapes, popularly known as adject prints in today's world, are also very popular among the tribals. These geometric representations may hold no sympathetic relation with the external form of life, and some simple lines and shapes on a wooden or a stone base can simply represent a village deity. Among the Nagas, tattoos with these similar geometric designs are found popularly among the elderly people in the village that symbolizes certain meanings. These markings on the body are commonly found on the leg, arm, chest, forehead and chin. Figure 3 shows a Naga woman from Anatogar village in Kipire district with tattoo on her face with geometrical design. Figure 4 also shows a Naga man from Puvikyu village under Kiphar district in Nagaland wearing a tattoo on the chest. Folk music and dance. Folk music and dance are characteristics in tribal life and culture that form a composite whole. Normally, the music and dances are accompanied by songs, and the verses in the songs are short but are repeated multiple times when singing. In certain occasions, dancing to the tune of these folk songs and musics is a good source of entertainment, as these folk tunes are normally lively and catchy. Among the tribals, the dances are of different types and are classified according to the occasion. The most common are the war and hunt dance, sacred dance, and social dance. These different folk dances are accompanied by folk songs, each carrying deep meaning that reflect the past life. There are songs of victory, war, love, honor, glory, worship, rituals, festivals such as cultivation, etc. Also, the folk songs are based on the traditional beliefs and practices, incorporating numerous mythological names of places and people. This form of art is a symbolic and represents the life of their ancestors, of their feelings, thoughts, activities, etc. In a popular performing art known as Changu Dance among the Bhunias and the Juangs of North Orissa, boys and girls take their respective roles where boys sing and play the music by playing the changu, and girls on the other hand dance to the music in front of the boys by interlocking their arms and moving about forward and backward. One common feature of the tribal folk dance is the interlocking of arms and moving sideways or back and forth. Some of the common instruments that are used for performing folk music by the tribals are flute, cymbal, gong, wooden drums, changu, a single membrane drum, etc. Other type of dance popular among the tribal are sacred and social dances. The sacred dances are associated with worship and rituals. This dance involves worshipping something sacred by dancing around the particular item according to the occasion they are performing the dance for. Social dances are commonly associated with seasonal festivals that are mostly agriculture and cultivation based, where people dance around the tree or crops praying to the gods and spirits for good harvest. There are also other social dances such as marriage, seasonal festivals, funerals, etc. The social dances are still prevalent in the recent days among some tribal groups, although it has been altered and more of an entertainment and merrymaking. India, with its diverse culture, has always been an important subject of study from holistic view. The tribals, who constitute a large population of the Indian total population, are one major attraction of the country because of their uniqueness and simple yet creative nature. With very rich oral tradition of the tribals, folklore reflects their culture to a great measure that brings solidarity and continuity among the tribal people. In the recent times, many of these folk songs and dances, rituals, ceremonies, etc., are no longer in the practice as a result of the impact of Christianity among some of the tribal communities, especially in the northeastern region of the country. However, the importance of the past practices is still honored in many tribal communities, and most of these myths and folk tales have philosophical thoughts that are often referred to in our daily lives because of their significant moral lessons. These past practices and culture that has been passed on from one generation to the other by the word of mouth are being reconstructed and preserved in the form of written literature. Various scholars and professionals have been studying the Indian tribal people and their culture for a long time, especially after independence, to preserve their material and non-material culture of the tribal India before they slowly disappear from the people and society. So student, let's summarize what we have learned in this module. Folklore is the reflection of one's culture that brings to light and traditional beliefs, myths, folk tales and practices of the people that have been passed through the generations by word of mouth. It is an oral tradition that expresses human culture, the living style through the local narratives and linguistic conventions. Societies, particularly the tribal societies, have an extremely rich oral tradition and they take importance in preserving and propagating this oral tradition through written literature, without which societies would have lost their oral tradition. Anthropological work on oral tradition remained untouched for a long period of time, and it was only after 50s the studies on oral tradition gained its popularity. Indian culture is considered to be one of the earliest literature of the world, and the first work of literature in the world is believed to be Rig Veda, which was written in Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages. India, with its numerous folklores and mythologies that are filled with moral teachings, are relevant even in today's world. The tribal population in India are an integral part of an Indian social civilization, and they are believed to be the earliest inhabitants of the country. They are grouping of people who are socially, culturally different from the neighbors and are being designated tribes and listed in scheduled for special treatment by the Constitution of India. A huge percentage of Indian subcontinent consists of their tribal groups belonging to Dravidian, Austroasiatic, Tibeto-Burman linguistic classification in a multiplicity of dialects. Most of these tribal groups have their own dialect and some bilingualism, and some have lost their original language. They have a long history of oral tradition, and most of them lack scripts for their languages. It was the only after independence that the history and the folklore of these tribal groups were properly reconstructed by academicians. The study of folklore in India underwent three major phases. Initially, it was the British administration in India who initiated the study of the local culture with their aim to rule the people of the country. After which came the missionaries who wanted to learn the local language and their missionary for their missionary purpose. The last phase was the initiative by the people within the country post independence. There are three components of folklore. First, the tribal folk literature, where they expresses their artistic nature in them through their thoughts, merrymaking, dance, hunting, frustrations, emotions, etc. that are included in folk tales, myths, legends, riddles, proverbs, folk songs, prose and verses, narratives, etc. Most of these types of folk literature are in spoken language, although some have been recorded in written form. Folk tales are regarded as the and unwritten records of the tribal history are the different from myths and legends. The tribal myths include stories about original of the universe, God, men, godmen, and even animals. They also dwell on extraordinary natural phenomena such as spirits, magic, life after death, etc. Legends, on the other hand, are considered to be historically true. They tell stories that involve heroic figures, historic places, events, etc. Another component known as folk art includes the tribal paintings, carvings, wood and metal crafts, garments with tribal prints and decorations, tattooing, ornamentations, etc. These forms of folk art could be fundamentally related to ritualistic, utilitarian, and individualistic types. The third type, the third is the folk music and dance that are characterized in tribal life and culture that form composite whole among the tribals. The dances are of different types and are classified according to the occasions. They based on their traditional beliefs and practices in the form of art is symbolic, representing the life of their ancestors, of their feelings, thought, activities, etc. Thank you.